All right, guys, so you were looking at these four, and hopefully you guys got something like this. For number 12, you guys got 8.1. -2 minus -1 does get me -1. Squared is 1. -7 minus 1 is -8. Squared is 64. Notice I said positive 64, not negative 64. Remember, whenever I square a negative, it always becomes positive. So I do get 8.1 for that one. For number 13, I took the difference of the x's. I got 2 squared, which is 4. 4 minus -4 is 8. So I have 64. 4 plus 64 is 68. So the square root of 68 is 8.2. For number 14, -7 minus -2 is -5. -6 minus 6 is -12. If I square that, I get 25 plus 144, which is 169, which is 13 when I take the square root of that. And then number 15, I ended up with the square root of 2. Just check that. Hopefully you guys got that. But now we're going to kind of extend that a little bit. And remember, we talked about for any right triangle, this idea always works. And that was a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So if I look at A, I'm going to say A is this one, and B is this one, and then I'm going to say C is this one. Now, why do I know C is 17? Because it's the longest side, and usually the longest side is always longest side is always the longest side. So if I do 13, sorry, let's scratch that. I'm going to do 7.2 squared plus 13.6 squared. If it's a right triangle, it should be 17 squared. So if I do 7.2, that's 51.84. And if I do 13.6 squared, that is 184.96. Why? How are you doing this so quickly, Mr. Graham? I kind of figured these out before I was going to meet with you guys. So if I add these two together, I do end up with 236.8. Now if I look at 17 squared, that does turn out to be 289. So are they the same? They are not the same. They do not equal. So what does that turn out to be? Actually, what it's going to turn out to be is this one's going to be an obtuse triangle. So here's a cool rule. There's a couple rules, and you guys can put this on the pink sheet. First idea is that if I look at right triangles, I know the smallest squared plus the second smallest squared should always equal whatever my longest side squared is. Now we just talked about an obtuse triangle. So in this case, when I look at it, my smallest side squared plus my second smallest should be less than whatever my longest side squared is. Okay? So let's look at this next one here. I know I don't really have much room, but we'll kind of work with it. This is my smallest, that's my second smallest, and this is my longest. So if I look at it, if I do 16 squared plus 71.5 squared and compare it to 72.5, so 16 squared is 256. If I take 71.5 squared, that's 5,102.25. And if I compare that to 7, oh, I got to square that side. I forgot to do that. So that's going to be 5,256.25. And then if I add these two together, that's going to turn out to be 536.25, which is bigger than this side, 5,256.25. So in this case, they are not equal. Actually, the sum is bigger than the other side squared. This turns out to be acute. So we can put that on our fancy pink sheet, but we can also write this down on that next page in notes, that I know if I take the smallest squared plus the second smallest squared, that sum should be greater than whatever my longest side squared is. Okay? So let's just look at number 18, just to kind of double check here things, okay? So this is my smallest. No, sorry, that's not my smallest. This is my smallest. and then this is my second smallest, and this is my longest. So if I do 1.7 squared plus 14.4 squared, I am going to compare that to 14.5 squared. If I do 14.5 squared, I know that's 210.25, and I have 207.36 is what 14.4 is. And then if I do 1.7, that's 2.89. If I add those two together, I do get it to be 210.25, and this is 210.25. So both of these are exactly the same, which makes this a right triangle using the Pythagorean converse. So here are your converses, okay? So I know if it's a right triangle, smallest squared plus second smallest squared is always going to equal my longest side squared. If I look at, for an acute triangle, the sum is always going to be bigger than what my longest side is. And then for obtuse triangles, the sum is always going to be smaller than the longest side squared. Here's what I'm going to ask you guys to do. I'm going to ask you guys to look at questions 20, 21, and I'm also going to ask you guys to look at 22 and 23. Try those out. See if you guys can figure out what type of relationship they are. And we'll talk in a second on the next video. Thanks, guys.